and welcome to what may well be the first published episode of Son of a Preacher Man. I've wanted to do this for a while, and I've also not wanted to do this for a while. And I guess the reason I waited is, because every comedian is doing this. We're all sitting in, most people have the desk in front of them. I have mine behind me and to the side of me. You can't see that. But most of them have a desk right here, and they have professional sound mics. They're wearing headphones, really big, demonstrative headphones. So you can tell I'm podcasting. This is how you know I'm doing a podcast. Do you really? What do you listen? You can't hear yourself? What do you? I mean, now I guess maybe it's different if you're doing call-ins or something. Most of the time, I find that, and maybe it's different for you if you're a regular person and your feed all day isn't just loaded with comedians. But all I know, it sucks. Everybody I know is a comedian, so my feed all day long is everybody with their headphones and the thing, doing their. Which look, I like most of it. I like most of it, but then for me to do it, the problem is I'm a contrarian. I'm a contrarian. I don't like to do what everybody else is doing. If everybody else is doing it, I feel like I missed the boat. Like, well, what am I going to do it for now? Everybody else is already doing it. It's like in New York when everyone was doing a one-man show. Everyone was doing a one-person show. And to the point where I just did one because I had a bit of a cause at the moment because it was just after 9/11. I lived 4 blocks from the Trade Center. This is a story I've told on many other. I just think I've been on a lot of other podcasts, but I've never really done it myself. But now, keep in mind, one caveat to that is that I actually was not there on 9/11. That was the 1 week that I had booked a TV movie gig shooting out of town. I was in Orlando, Florida that day. But then I came home and, for weeks and months, our neighborhood was closed and you had to be driven home by the police. You had to be like the cabs could only take you to about, first it was 14th Street, I think it was, then it moved to Houston and then it moved to Canal and wherever that ending point was, then they would drop you off and then you would be driven home. You had to show them your ID to prove that you lived down there, and then they would take you to that address. And so night after night I was driven home by either the police or the army, the military, quite frankly. And the thing, and I'd be trashed, I'd be wasted. But they couldn't really be mad at me because there was nothing you could do. I was trying to just get home, It's not my fault that we were subjected to the greatest terror attack on American soil, and consequently the neighborhood was closed. So they were nice about it. They were very accommodating because I would be like, you got things that, But during that time, so then my one-person show was actually, it was called Rage, because I was so mad. Well, okay, the Rage was based on an experience that I had, which was one night I was doing a late spot at the comic strip, because that's all I got. Usually at the clubs, I was in at most clubs, but because I was dirty, that's another thing. Talk about being a contrarian. I was doing filthy comedy when no one wanted filthy comedy. Everybody wanted clean comedy. It's like, well, fuck that. I'm going to be fucking dirty. Plus that, I always loved dirty comedy. It was never... I know people tend to think that it's being easy or taking a shortcut. But I never saw it that way. I always saw it as just what I loved to do. From the time I was a kid, I was the kid telling dirty jokes because I was a son of a preacher man. And my home was so restrictive and you couldn't say anything. You couldn't, everything was wrong. Everything all the time was wrong. And so I'd get out of the house, I'd be like, shit, damn, motherfucker, look at the pussy, look at his dick, blah, 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 titty, blah. I was, it would all just, blah. The second I would get away from the house, that's who I was at school. I was 2 totally different people. In fact, to that point, in my home growing up, I was the quiet one who got great grades and never got in trouble. Because I knew because my father he was a preacher, he was a minister, but unfortunately he was also, he wasn't stable. In fact, he was incredibly unstable, and that's the nicest way I can put it. and he was abusive. He was very abusive, physically abusive. He beat us a lot, uh, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. He was just a very abusive person. And so I learned that the game to play at home was to just not be, just don't do anything that would draw attention, that would get me in trouble. Just, So while I was a wild man outside of the house, I'd leave the house, blah, blah, but it was always within the confines of not getting in trouble. Because if I got in trouble, if I got caught, they were complaining, they got bad, that I was going to get beat really bad. So it was always like I was always playing the line. I was always willing, like verbally, but I never really wanted to cross the line in such a way, like criminally or anything that was going to get me in the crosshairs of my father. So it was always just making fun, just being silly and saying nasty shit. So that was my way of crossing the line in a fun way that wouldn't get me in any trouble, hopefully. So when 9/11 happens, so the title Rage. Okay, I was doing a late spot because I was dirty. I would do dirty jokes, so I would always get late spots. I would do a late spot at the comic strip, and it was probably the late night. You could come and sign up for late night, and you didn't even have to get booked. It just was like if anybody was left, and it was the worst because it was only the few people that were just too nice to get up and walk out on comics, and the system was set up to trap people for as long as possible because they would just immediately at the end said bring up the next comic and so that person would just come up, so they would, and you would see the incredible disappointment on people's faces when they didn't manage to escape on the transition because the host would be done at a certain point and they were just comics just trapping them there. What was a common line? We all had different lines, like calling them comedy hostages was always a big icebreaker late at night. I didn't write it. It was one of those lines that was, everybody kind of said it late night. And so things like that. And so anyway, so one night it's late. I do the late night spot. I'm probably drunk. I'd say I was drunk. And I'm tired. It was a very stressful time, and I was still working a full-time job in New York. And so I went, which was at a French bank. Remind me to tell you about the French bank. It was, let me just tell you that. Let me just say this, okay? If you ever have to work for a bank, work for a French one. Because they are so relaxed. I mean, everyone came in at 8:30, but everyone would have breakfast till 9, read the paper, converse, have conversation, talk, and then you'd work. Then there was lunch was at least an hour. People were pretty loose about the lunch too. Usually a little over. Unless if you were one of the bankers, you were gone. Hour and a half too, easy every day. And then, like around 4, everything would kind of be like, oh, we are close to finished, huh? And then, like a lot of times, wine would come out. The wine cart would go by, and we'd be, well, just finish your work. So it's a very relaxed, comfortable environment. Okay. So, anyways, I was very tired. I'm on this train. I'm on the subway, going home. Now, at this point, in the days and months and initial years after 9/11, the trains were an everyday evolution. Every day they were having to divert because based on where they were cleaning up and based on where they were rebuilding and all that. So the trains were constantly switched. The N is now on the Q and till it turns into a J. It was crazy. And so the signs, it looked like L.A. street parking signs with all the conditions like this, that, but it was every day changing. Like the first thing you'd have to do is check the sign, what train is available, where, and again, this is 2001, so people don't have internet on their phones the way they do now, and so you could go to a website and check the updates on a website before you left. But usually you would just get there and you would look at the signs and try and figure out which train you were taking. So at that point, the 6th train was the main train that would go from the upper east side on 2nd Avenue, where the club was. I think it ran on 3rd Avenue maybe, and I think 3rd. And it would come all the way down, and normally it would go to Nassau. But because of everything that went on, it would only go as far as Brooklyn Bridge, which is a stop away from me, and then I would just walk home from there, or if there was a ride available. So I fall asleep on the train. It's late at night. I'm drunk. I'm tired. I work at the French bank. I mentioned that, and I go down. The train stops finally, comes to an end, and the doors open, and like some construction, cleanup type guys get on, and I realize we're at the end. We're at Brooklyn Bridge. I'm like, oh my god, I fell asleep. I missed it. So, because we've been sitting there for a minute. That's how you always do when a train reached the end, is it just wouldn't get going again. It would just sit there. And like that, in your mind, that time lapse, and you're like, oh, we're here. This is the end. We've been sitting here a while. So that clicks in. I see all these construction guys get on, and I'm like, oh, and I just like compose myself, grab my bag, and run off the train. I run off the train. And I see some stairs, and the stairs, you could tell, had been closed by emergency tape, but that the tape had been moved, obviously by these construction persons. So I was like, all right, I guess we can use this now. Run up the stairs, run out the exit at the top of the stairs, and there it was. It was the pile. The train had gone an extra stop and was at Church Street, I believe. That's where I came out, was at Church Street. And I didn't know that. And you were supposed to, I guess we were all supposed to have gotten off at Brooklyn Bridge, and they went to get the people who were working on the pile and take them off. And I didn't know that. I ran out, and there it was. I don't know, 3, 4, 5 stories of twisted metal. It was unlike anything I've ever seen. I mean, there were ruins. It was ruins. It was in pieces of, it was a war zone. It was, if I had to describe it, if you remember the original Terminator movie, when they show the world that the guy had come from, where the hunter-killers were tracking him down, and you see it, and everything's destroyed and burning, and it's just skulls and just rocks and everything in rubble. Okay, that was what it looked like, only for real. And not there were skulls necessarily, but the smell, that was the thing, the smell. It was weird. It was, I describe it as the most identifiable part of it was the smell of burning plastic. That was the most identifiable part of it. But it was more than that. It was also burning metal and everything else, rock and everything. So, and I'm standing there, and I'm staring at it. And I realize, I look to my right, and I see the barricades about 100 yards off to my right, which meant that where I was illegal. I was breaking the law. I was trespassing. You were not supposed to go past those barricades unless you were, a first responder or a construction person there helping with the cleanup. So I immediately start running. I look around. I don't see nobody. It's weird. I'm alone. And I start running for the barricades as fast as I can. And I jump the barricades. And it was like, okay, I could feel a lot of spirits in the air, and I swear they shot through me like, okay, again, to use the movie reference, at the end of Indiana Jones, when they opened the Ark of the Covenant and all the ghosts start, okay, that's what happened to me. That's the best way I can describe it, was all of a sudden I felt like all these spirits shoot through me, just, and I just started to weep in a profound way, in a way that wasn't my own. And I could feel their rage. They were so angry because they didn't know what had happened. It was like, what happened? What happened? And I just started yelling out to them. The terrorists hijacked 2 planes and they flew them into the buildings. That's what happened. And the buildings burned and came crashing down. And I'm just yelling this to the air. And I could just feel their anger, their fury, their rage. And I fell down and just sobbed. Just sobbed. For it felt like, I don't know, like probably about 15, I don't know. I was there for a minute. And I was just like, I gotta get out of here. And I walked up. So my one-man show, I should call this bipolar. So my one-man show was called Rage. It was about the rage that I felt. You know, and it wasn't just their rage, it was my rage over them doing this, you know, and it happening, and just, there were, you know, and the way the destruction, it was just so much, you know. So that was the show, but the show in itself really wasn't, it was like I did, like, basically my set. I did a bunch of material, and then led into this monologue about, you know, rage against, you know, the terrorists want us to be mad. They want to, I don't know. But that was what it was. And it wasn't good. It wasn't genuine. It wasn't complete, you know. And I didn't believe in it. But I did it because I felt like, you know what, okay, let's do the Rage show. And I did it, and I couldn't get very many people to come see it. It didn't go very well. So when it came to doing this, whew, how long was that? That was a 17-minute tangent. That's why I wasn't so eager to do this, because I was like, am I doing this because everybody else is doing it, or am I doing it because I have something to say? And I'll be honest, if you live in these times and don't have something to say, who are you? Now, don't get me wrong, one of the problems with these times is that everybody's got something to say. That's one of the things I hate about social media. I mean, it used to be, you know, if you did work that got you acclaim, and if somebody didn't like it, well, the only people they could tell was their own friends and family, you know? There was no way for them to tell you directly, hey, you're a piece of shit. But now, we've created this communication system where you can just reach out and tell somebody that you would otherwise have no interaction with whatsoever. You would admire their work. You would hope that they're, you know, some type of, but you would never really know. Maybe if you did meet them in a passing at a hotel entrance, they would sign a thing for you. And, you know, they used to say, you don't want to meet your heroes, because it turns out they're human assholes. But now you know they're assholes, because they're spilling it all over, you know, social media all day. And that's the thing. And so now anybody just reach out to you and be like, you're a piece of shit. And just try. And that's the thing. So much of it is about trying to get an emotional reaction out of whoever they're reaching out to. And there's no winning that game. If you respond, they won. They got an emotional reaction, regardless of whether you're right, regardless of whether, you know, they had any right to say anything to you, you know, now they win because you emotionally responded to them. And they're which is why my response has always been pretty much silence. Like, okay. But I will block some people on occasion, and I know that in itself is a validated, like, they didn't like what I said. They blocked me. Guess they can't take it. It's not that I can't take it. I just have no reason to. I have no desire. Why should I take it from you? We don't know each other. I'm just a comedian. But there is so much going on right now that I do feel compelled. And there are lots of, like that story, I've told that story in a few other podcasts, but it's nice to be able to just share my own stories. I have a million stories. I've done a million things. Listen, let me tell you something. Let's talk about this quarantine and this pandemic and what it's done to stand-up comedy. I mean, one of the things, the worst part about all of this is now the racial thing, totally support Black Lives Matter. And that, I think, I mean, powder keg moment, but also that's something that's very real. You know, here's the thing. I thought I was woke. Can you... I really did. I really thought I got it. I'm like, yeah, they treat you like shit, you know? It's like, but I didn't get it. I really didn't, you know? And here's how I know I didn't get it, okay? Because there was a time, now, obviously it didn't take this to make me realize this, but there was a time when I would watch Cops, you know, like back in the 90s and stuff like that, I would watch Cops, and I would always think to myself, like, well, that's your problem. Why are you running? Don't run. If you don't run from the police, they don't have to chase you. They won't tackle. This was my thinking in the 90s. I didn't realize that if you're a black person, a real black person, I know I joke that I'm 6% black and, you know, and everything, but for real, you know, I didn't realize that that your fear, your experience, your cultural experience was the police, was that if you get in that car, you may never go home. And that wasn't real to me, because to me, the few times that I've been arrested, I knew I was only there until somebody came to get me. Okay? I knew that I wasn't going to be, you know, they weren't going to try and pin anything on me. But I didn't realize that you just could be walking home and they're just going to try and pin some shit on you. And for you go from walking home to never seeing your fucking family again. And that really didn't, I don't think I really realized that for a long time. When it really began to become clear to me was when I watched a documentary in the 2000s about South Central and Inglewood, those areas, you know, in the Rodney King time during the 90s and the OJ thing and everything. And, you know, they did something, I guess they had created a rule where, like, all it was is, I think it was either like, if it was 2 black guys together or 3, maybe it had to be 3 black guys. If there were just 3 standing together, that was probable cause. It was like stop and frisk, which I didn't experience that. I left right before that went crazy, you know, which I can't even believe that really happened. I'm like, what? In America? But that's what I thought then. I was like, wait a minute, you can't just walk up and just like, show me your shit, get your pot. But that's what they were doing. And that's when I realized it really was a much different relationship. That they were always the suspect. You know, and I also, you know, here's the other thing, you know, that was awesome. But it was during this experience that I really, again, now I think that, oh, it's so bad for them. Now I get it. But then I watched during this, I'm watching the things happen and realizing how many people have been killed by police brutality and how many people are held back at every level from resources, from financial resources, educational resources, to healthcare resources. I was like, oh my God, this is real. This is also real. And I watched that documentary, I believe it's Ava DuVernay 13th, about the 13th Amendment. Now they made it, basically, they were like, okay, you're not slaves unless you're a criminal, then you're a slave again. And that blew my mind. And I was just like, wow, this experience. And then that's when I realized that, if I'm being completely honest, I realized that my whole life I've been the recipient of white privilege by default. I've never considered myself a white person. I'm a Mexican. All my family, very Mexican. I'm 3rd of 7 children. Very Mexican. But I'm very light, very fair-skinned, and my name is Greg Wilson. That's the whitest name you can have. There's no part about it that you look, oh, Greg Wilson, you're coming. I swear to God, I was identified as a Mexican correctly. I always played that game with people. People always ask me, like, what's your ethnicity? What's your background? From the time that I was, young, in middle school, and all the people, parents, what's your background? And I would always, at a certain point, I would just say, guess. And no one ever guessed Mexican first. It was usually Italian, Jewish, and then, I don't know, white guy? Like Mexican, and I say Mexican, and be like, oh, it's kind of, like it was this, it just didn't play out on my face, despite what's in my blood. Which has also been, I think it's 82%, because that's the other thing, when you get the blood test, when you get the DNA test, it's not, it doesn't, Mexican, Latino isn't a thing. Latino isn't a race, apparently, to them. It's Native American and Spanish, which you see how that happened. So it was like 44% Native American, 42% or 40% Spanish, something like that. So that's how Mexican, Latino I am. And keep in mind, I had to put, because of that, because, I grew the mustache, that now I finally looked a little bit more Hispanic, and I adopted my mother's maiden name, my grandfather's name, who if I have one horrific grandfather, and then one who was basically a hero. He was a hero during World War II, fought in the Pacific Theater, and he was Romero, Tranquilino Romero. And so I work as Greg Romero Wilson so that people can finally see me for who I actually am, which is a Mexican American, a Latino American, But for most of my life, I was just Greg Wilson, Gregory David Wilson. It's Anthony Michael Hall. That was, you know what I mean? It's a white guy. I had the whitest name. And the Wilson thing, and here's this thing. I would go on auditions for Hispanic roles. And I'd go in there as Greg Wilson, or even worse, the Greg Wilson, which people hated. Which is one of a contrarian. The more people hated it, the more I loved it. I was like, well, you don't have to do it. I'm doing it. I loved seeing it on lineups, because it stood out from everybody. Everybody else was their name and whatever. And it used to amaze me, because I would think, if I were a magician or a rapper, who would give a shit? It would be considered a mild statement if I practiced one of those. They're the great Rolando, the magnificent, or rappers, just with whatever they want to make up, they could just make it up. Tekashi 6ix9ine, half his name is numbers. I mean, come on. 50 Cent? These aren't their names. So, but I'm with the Greg Wilson. But anyway, so I'd go in there and I would say, okay, I'm Greg. And I would spend half the audition explaining how I was Mexican. Because you knew that the conversation was, if we want to hire this guy, we're going to have to explain it to network or the producer or somebody else how you're Mexican. And so it was always explaining, my father was actually a Calleros, my mother's a Romero, but my dad, when he was a young boy, my grandmother married Marvin Wilson, he adopted my father, and we became Wilsons. Is the story I've always been told is how that happened. So the Wilson name, we're definitely not Wilsons. There's no Wilson blood in us, but we got the name. So my dad was Charles Edward Wilson. Although he was, very Mexican man. And and I don't speak Spanish. Ugh. Which is terrible, because my parents are native Spanish speakers, fluent native Spanish speakers, always been bilingual, but my father always felt like having a Mexican accent hurt him when it came to his job, when it came to having a job wherever he worked. He always felt like that accent, like people, so he didn't want us to have it. So him and my mother never spoke Spanish to us. And in fact, it became like their secret language. It became their secret language that they were used to talk to each other, so that we couldn't talk about us in front of us. That was basically it. until we got to like high school, and then we started like taking Spanish and starting trying to figure out, wait a minute, I know idiota. You called me an idiot. And, but, so I didn't, so I wasn't a good Mexican. So I was basically an undercover Mexican. And I was an inadvertent recipient of white privilege. Even though I didn't ask for it, I was getting it, you know? So it took me a long time to really realize how real this disparity between, you know, what I had experienced and the black experience in America. What was I talking about? I'm a contrarian. All that is, I'm a contrarian. So even as a Mexican, I'm a total contrarian. I'm not even a good Mexican. I'm the opposite of a good Mexican. Although it is something I definitely feel like I've settled, like I feel like more connected to it now more than ever. I feel like adding Romero and just kind of just embracing my Hispanic nature, I just feel very connected to that culture in a way that I never really did before. And it's not disingenuous, and it's not for any commercial reasons. It's because because that's who I ultimately am. And that was the thing, I never really fit in with white kids. I always wanted to, but I didn't look like them. I just had the same kind of name and spoke kind of the way they did. And that was the other thing. My family moved around a lot when I was growing up. They moved around all the time. My dad was always changing jobs and chasing churches. And, oh, we got to see this guy. We got to be close to that. So we were always moving around. And because of that, also, he was a cuckoo. Because of that, wherever I was, whoever I was around, I would just adapt to them. I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to be liked. So, but the one time that did not happen was when my family moved from California to Texas, to the Dallas area when I was in like the 4th grade. And we moved there, and we moved to a very small, incredibly racist town outside named Greenville, Texas. Now, I'm not saying it's still racist, but when we moved there, you can look this up, this sign is online. There was a sign that said, welcome to Blackland County. That was the county name. Greenville was the county seat. So it said, welcome to Blackland County, the blackest land with the whitest people. That was the sign. That was the welcome sign. Me and my Mexican family coming all the way from California, we're like, oh. I remember us reading it, be like, what did that say? Does that mean? Oh, maybe they just left it up. Because we'd come from the Bay Area. I was born in San Jose, California. I had grown up in the Bay Area where interracial relationships were very common. Gay couples were very common. It was very liberal. Everybody was kind of out there. This was the 70s. So it was all kind of just out there. So I was very Then we come over here and oh, and in fact, oh my God. So we've been there at this school. I don't know how long, not very long. And I remember somebody coming up to me and they're like, blacks versus whites after school, blacks versus whites. And I swear to God, I looked at him and I go, at what? It's like, what are you guys going to play? And then my brother and I sat in the parking lot across the street from the school and watched in horror as the black kids lined up on one end, the white kids lined, and then like little redneck Braveheart, they all like, ah! And we're like, what is this town? And then word got out that we were Mexican, so then we were like, they didn't know really what to do with us, because we weren't black, and we weren't white, but our last name was Wilson. They were a bit confounded, but they didn't like us. But that was the first accent I heard that I was like, I don't want to sound like you people. Because right off the bat, it was, this racism showed itself right away, and they had a real hick accent out there. And this was like day 2, I think, of this new experience in school. I immediately developed a nemesis. His name was Todd. Now, 2 things happened in the first 2 days of my new school in 4th grade. Number 1, I discovered the power of comedy. And number 2, I discovered the need to have quick comebacks. How to handle a heckler. Because day 1, I go in there and they're like, okay, everyone, this is our new student, Greg, and I want everyone to go around the room and just say your name and a little something about yourself, and then Greg will have you go last. So they go around the room and everyone's like, hey, I'm so-and-so and I like soccer. I'm so-and-so and I like coloring, whatever. So it comes around to me and I go, my name's Greg and I like telling jokes, but I hate getting slapped for them afterwards. And they fell out. Like they they were like, ah, and I was like, did that work? I got more. Like, I was like, and I think that's what made Todd not like me, was this attention that this got me. And I immediately was like, ooh, I'm the funny guy. So we're in the restroom and I'm wearing this shirt. This is day 2 now. And I'm wearing this shirt. I remember this because this is like, I didn't have good clothes. All my clothes were hand-me-downs from my brothers. But this was like the second, like I wore my best shirt day 1. This is my second best shirt, which was like, it was a polo cut, but it was not a polo, which you were supposed to have polo. But we didn't have polo. And it had these 2 tennis rackets, these 2 plastic tennis rackets, which it broke, like they were like cracked, you know. And so we're at the urinal. And this was another thing that was new to me. They had the trough urinal, which I had never seen before in my life. California at that point had evolved to the individual urinals. This still had the trough, everybody just whip it out and pee in the sink kind of a thing. So I'm in there and Todd comes up and he's peeing next to me. He goes, hey man, I like your shirt. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's tennis. He goes, yeah, I used to have one just like it. And I was like, really? He goes, yeah. Then my dad got a job. Because we were poor. But nobody, and in the 80s, 90s, I think this is the 80s by now, I don't remember, or close to it, it might have been 1980. Or 79, somewhere in there. But wearing the right clothes was very important, and they were all expensive, and so and we couldn't afford them. So I had Kmart clothes. And that was if I got lucky. I got Kmart clothes. Usually I just, like I said, I got the hand-me-downs. So he, of course, him laughing his ass off, walking away, and I just was like, I will never not be prepared for this again. And I became, and also I'm short, and so I became, that's when I started reading people. I started analyzing people, looking for their flaws, looking for something to make fun of. So if they said something to me, I was going to hit them. And I was going to try and hit them in the one thing I thought they were the most embarrassed about. And I would say, and so in my mind, I was making mental notes about everybody, about how I could get them. And what I realized was I could really hurt people that way. I didn't mean to, but I would really hurt. I mean, I would cut. You would say anything to me, and I would cut to the quick as hard as I could, as fast as I could. And it made me kind of like, some people loved it. A lot of people hated me. Like a lot of people laughed when I was doing it to somebody else. But then when it was their turn, they'd hate me. And, so it took me a long time to learn to turn that off. And it's funny, being a comedian, a lot of people always want me to kind of read them. And I'm like, you don't want me to do this. Because then I would say something and then they're, why would you say that? It's like, see, I told you you don't want to play this game with me. Because I don't know how to play nice. But it took me a long time to learn to control my mouth. Because I would just say the worst shit to people no matter what. Am I an asshole? Was I an asshole? Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people thought I was a fucking little asshole. And I was. But I thought it was a defense mechanism. I thought, I was trying to be funny. So now I'm doing a podcast. So here we are. And this, I think, is going to be a lot of what it is. Is kind of me just rambling and talking about different things, mixing in some stories about my life, current events, and then of course some politics stuff, because that is, what's so funny is I remember watching, movies and stuff about the 60s, and everybody was all concerned about politics and Richard Nixon and the war in Vietnam. And I remember thinking to myself, like, thank God I miss that. Who wants to, they're like, we're going to this political meeting. I'm like, who gives a crap? Nobody listens to us anyway. I was so glad I didn't have to be involved in politics. And now it's like, we got to get involved in this shit, because this shit, they've run away with it, man, and they're doing horrible shit. And if we don't get involved, they're going to keep on doing it. And so I think it's created this new era of us all, like, and you see it on Facebook, and I wish we could just be more, I don't know, less, and this thing, I'm older now. I'm not that, I like to think that I'm not that same asshole I was as a young man. I like to think that I'm a nicer person, because now everyone's an asshole. Now everyone's going around stabbing each other, saying the worst thing. And so, again, the contrarian in me now that everyone's stabbing each other, being assholes, now I'm the guy that's like, hey, everybody cool out, calm the fuck down. Just chill out. Just take it. What are we fighting over? Why? Stop it. Now I want to be the peacemaker. Me, the asshole. To that end, I've started my own political party. And it is something that I felt led to do. It wasn't something I wanted to do. In my mind, I felt like this is the answer, because I believe, because I'm not, the Democrats, I'm like, I'm not with you guys. And I'm certainly not with the Republicans. I grew up a Republican. And that's the thing, I hate that statement when they're like, if you're not a Democrat when you're young, you don't have a heart. And if you're not a Republican when you're old, I think it's the other way around. You can be a Republican when you're young and you don't think anything you do can hurt anybody else, fuck everybody. And then when you get older and realize, hey, there's, people come from a lot of different backgrounds and circumstances, and sometimes everybody needs a leg up. It's not just, yes, there are people that abuse the program, but the vast majority of people who just need help, and we've seen, and that is, to be a positive in all of this, is the fact that people who decried social programs need to make better choices. This shows you that sometimes your life kicked you in the balls, and it wasn't a fucking choice. Nobody chose this pandemic. But now everybody's out of work. Republicans, Democrats, we're all out of work. Everybody needs a hand. Everybody needed that stimulus check. Everybody needed unemployment. Everybody needed PPP loans. And of course, who took them the most? The PPP loans. They were handed out like golden tickets to the. But what I'm saying is, it showed that anybody can get knocked down. Anybody can find themselves in a situation where they need help, and that's what the government is supposed to do. The government is there to help us. It's supposed to be there to help us, to protect us, to give us aid when there is no other aid. This is what to protect us both from, threats, foreign and domestic, countries that would want to hurt us, and us from hurting each other. It's not supposed to be about what we all know it's become about. So, I started my own political party because, to me, and I know everyone says that a third party can't work. And I believe that that's only true until it's not true anymore. Because, the Republicans and the Democrats, there used to be the Whigs and the Tories, and then, then somehow they got united, the Republicans which was created as a cause against slavery, They were the radical Republicans. So, I say it only doesn't work until it does. And I feel that the only reason it hasn't worked is because the few times it's come close to working, it's usually based around a singular personality that's running for president. When you look at FDR and the Bull Moose Party, when you look at Ross Perot and what was it, the Freedom Party, I think it was, or Independence or something like that. So all these, they're based around that guy and that moment, that cause. And then when that fails, then it all just goes away. And I am not running for anything because I wouldn't survive. Listen, I've done too much horrible things, but I believe that I can try to excite people about there being a third option. And the third party, in my mind, the whole idea is to strip away the labels, stop this, because two parties, two is not the number of balance. Two is the number of constant struggle. It will always be a seesaw. It'll always be a tug of war. That probably didn't look right, but you know what I'm saying, okay? Two is constant struggle. Whereas three, now you have a balancing agent. Now three is a magic number in our world. If you look at comedy, comedy works in threes. Triangle, so many things work in threes. And we need that third option. And I believe that if someone can make people believe in it, then it can grow and it can win elections and it can become a true force. And it's not about necessarily, I think I'd love to see both of these two get eradicated, and ultimately I think we should probably be in a dynamic of multiple parties, where there has to be, negotiation. Right now, these guys, they don't want nothing. It's like, no, we're in charge. Now we're in charge. No. And it's a constant fuck you. It's a constant cycle of payback. One runs it and they're like, fuck you, get out. No. And then the other one gets it now. You get out. And you have to take enough away from both of them to where they have to work together. And if that's what happens, that they work together to get something done against us, that's progress. So that's why I did it. And here's the thing, there's a bunch of other ones out there, and I have a whole plan to kind of like unite them into a single party. If we all work together, all of a sudden we'll have presence. So, and there's a lot of people, I'm trying to think, it's progress.us, I think, or something like that, that Michael Douglas did a big video for about the viability of a third party, and they're trying to do it by creating this thing called favored choice balloting, where you rank your choices, which essentially means basically if a third party got a lot of twos, it could beat out another party's ones and threes. That's the idea. But I think a motivated party that people believe in with better choices and a strong perspective could just simply be the choice. I think they could just win and win a lot. And I think now people are, and that's the thing, like Republicans especially, there's so many Republicans that hate this guy, and they don't have another choice because they would rather just not vote, which is fine by me, than vote. They just can't be Democrats. So you have to just give them a different option. Just give them a third option because they will never switch over to being a Democrat. They can't do it. They can't go to their family and be like, yeah, I'm a Democrat now, I guess. No, but you can give them a third option that makes sense. Because I think most people today are a little liberal on some issues and a little conservative on other issues. Usually they're a little liberal on social issues and a little conservative on money issues. And I think that's kind of more the way it needs to be. And I look at it like this. I think politics needs to reflect America's playlists. Because I think if you looked at most people's playlists on their phone, you would see that there's some rap, there's some country rap, there's some rock, there's some electronica. So there's K-pop. So there's all these different things. So we're not tied. Where it used to be like if you listen to country, you only listen to country. Or if you listen to rock, you were a metalhead, you only listen to metal. But that just isn't the way it is anymore. People listen to a little bit of everything. And I think that's what we can offer in politics. It's not about trying to change anybody. It's about trying to find the best representative for that group of people. I think one of the dumbest things you could do is expect people in San Francisco to believe the same way that people do in Alabama, or to expect people in Alabama to think the same way that they do in Seattle. You can't, they'll never do that. The thing to do is to represent them and create an environment where those two people can be honest about themselves and create some policy that works for everybody. Is that crazy? Am I out of my mind? Because I don't think I am, and I think America's ready for it, and I think you're ready for it. I know I'm ready for it. So if you are, listen, we have weekly Zoom meetings on Wednesday night. Join the All-American Party. You can follow us on Facebook. It's at AAP in the USA. Same on Twitter, although I somehow got our Twitter account suspended, I guess, for some of my posts. And we are at All-American Party on Instagram. So just follow us and let us know that you want to be involved, and obviously we'd love to get you in on the Zoom meetings. You can share, because we are working on many initiatives. One of them was this thing called Pray Day. That was the first initiative that I thought of, and because America needs healing, and on Friday I tried to encourage everybody. We were trying to make it a national thing, but of course we don't have the clout to pull it off, and that's what I was doing with the tweeting. I was tweeting at people with big platforms that had been, posting things about like, Lord, give us peace and stuff like that. I'm like, join us for Pray Day, and I was hoping they would. They did it. But the reason I created the initiative was so that in the track record, people from that are considered, one of the things I hate about the Republican Party is that they have co-opted Christianity. It's like, if you're a Christian, you're Republican. No, you don't have to be. There are Christian Democrats, okay? Just because they accept Muslims and Sikhs and Buddhists and everybody else doesn't mean they're not Christians. And so I feel that's one of the things that drives you crazy is that the Republicans act like they are Christianity, and yet we have the least Christian president in the history of Republicanism. And I say that because, look, let's talk Christianity really quickly. Again, son of a preacher man. I've read the entire Bible, front to back, every word of it. And I'll tell you this. The litmus test is the fruits of the Spirit. You look at the fruits of the Spirit, and you can tell, just go down the list, is Trump any one of those? And if he's not, then how can you tell me he's a Christian? He's not. He didn't even know how to hold a Bible. He was like, okay? And it just bothers me that the Republicans have acted like they own Christianity. Nobody owns it. And so now they can look at my party and see that we're not afraid to be spiritual. We're not afraid to put out an idea like Pray Day. You're allowed to be Christian here, okay? Now, do I believe that Christianity is the guiding principle behind the All-American Party? No, because this country was founded on religious freedom. But that doesn't mean that I am afraid to do something that is influenced by my Christian upbringing. And again, I'm the last person in the world that should be doing this. I'm a filthy comedian. I'm all dick jokes and pussy juice and shit jokes and all of that. That's what my career has been, just saying horrible things. This is probably why you've never heard of me. But in this moment, I felt, everyone feels, I got to do something. We got to do something. And that was my do something. It's something that had been clawing at me for a long time, and then, when all this went down, and here's the other thing, and you may think I'm crazy. I think I'm crazy, maybe I'm crazy, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't even tell you this. Maybe I won't even publish, I don't know. But I remember asking God for a sign. I was like, God, you really want me to start this third party? Is this really what, and this is before all this happened. I was like, I just wish you'd give me a sign, like some sign where I couldn't deny it. Like you're like, whoa. I remember about 2 weeks into the quarantine, the shutdown, everything shut down, and about 2 weeks into it, I'm on a walk, because again, what else are we doing? We're just walking. So I'm on a walk, and I'm looking around, and just nobody's outside, everything, the streets are empty. It's an unbelievable apocalypse scape. And in my mind, I heard God say, you wanted a sign. And then I started laughing, because then I realized, don't ever ask God for a sign, because you just might get it. And God don't do small. You know when it's a sign. And that was the sign. And I tried to act like it wasn't up to me, because I tried to put it out there to other people. You start a third party, start a third party. No one would do it. I wanted just somebody else to do it. And I'd just join in. Like, what's his name? Cuomo's brother, who got COVID and came out and was like, I'm not even sure I want to do broadcasting anymore. I was tweeting, I'm like, dude, start a third party. You've got everybody's attention. Start a third party. Nah, nothing. So finally, it just, I couldn't fight the voice in my head any longer. Saying, dude, what else do you need? How long is it going to take you? And at a certain point, it was like, do you have to get COVID? Before you listen? And I was like, no, I got it. I'll do it. I'll start it. And that's when it kind of just spilled. And then I was still kind of dragging my feet. And then the Black Lives Matter, the George Floyd thing, everything erupted. And that's when it became clear that this is what I had to do. It was time. The moment in time had come. It was undeniable. We went from bad to worse. And if I was going to do something, this is what I had to do. Will it go anywhere? I don't know. I believe in it. And I'm committed to it. But, again, maybe this isn't the one. But I believe everything in life is timing. And I believe that this is the time. As I once said to Joey Gay, this are the times. Anyways, I think that's pretty good. There's a number of other topics I wanted to get to, but I think this is a pretty good stopping point. We're at close to an hour. This is my first episode. I'm Gregory David Wilson, a.k.a. Greg Romero Wilson, and I am the son of a preacher man.